Ready? I call this meeting to order. It is 7 p.m. on Monday, October 2nd, 2017. This is a regular meeting of the Richfield School Board. In attendance this evening, we have board members Tim Paulus, Crystal Brocky, John Ashmead, and I'm Christine Malik. Paula Cole is sick today, and I am sure Peter Tensing will be walking in any minute. We also have Superintendent Unowski and our new student school board representatives, Matthew Kiflu, and Millie Sanchez Vergara is our other representative who is not here yet. Do we want to start? Well, so maybe we'll start, Matthew, if you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you decided to join us.
Okay, so I didn't really have anything planned.
We didn't prep Matthew for this.
So do I have to bring this closer?
Just go ahead and talk.
You're good.
So I'm Matthew Kiflu. I'm a senior at Richfield High School. Student body president, I guess. I was interested in kind of learning more about how the school board functions and kind of local government. I kind of sought out this position after I was after participation in Boys State, and that kind of gave me showed me what it was like to see, or showed me what it was how local government functions, and I was kind of interested in getting more involved and getting a chance to kind of just learn more and kind of give my input from the high school. So yeah.
We're excited for your input.
So, and we, Superintendent Unowski and I met with Matthew earlier and had a great conversation. He had some great questions, and I think he's ready to join in and ask questions along with all the rest of us. So I would like to remind us of the Richfield Public Schools mission statement. Richfield Public Schools inspires and empowers each individual to learn, grow, and excel. We'll keep this in the forefront of our minds as we work together this evening. So we will start with review and approval of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Brocky, a second by Mr. Ashmead. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the agenda passes. We did not have any requests for public comment today, so we will move on to information and proposals and receiving of delegations. So we will start with Richfield High School Principal Latanya Daniels.
So this meeting is being hosted, and hosted is what we call it when one of our schools comes to present. We have Principal Latanya Daniels and her high school team here to share with us an update on the high school transformation, the move to the 7-period day, obviously change of start times, and a wide range of new options and courses. And so with that, I am going to turn things over to Principal Daniels.
Good evening, everyone. So, as Superintendent Unowski said, we are going to share a quick yet comprehensive overview of the high school transformation and its status to date. And so when we set out to transform the high school, these were the major drivers. The objective was to improve Richfield High School's overall academic proficiency rates, graduation rates, expand college credit and rigorous course enrollment, as well as narrow the achievement gap. And these are the different strategies that we have in place beyond other things that we have our school improvement plan. But in regards to the high school transformation, we wanted to do these specific things. As a reminder, increase the enrollment of in-school support courses, increase the enrollment of in-school advanced courses, increase equity of access to enrichment courses, increase equity of access to advanced courses, increase number of students accessing RHS advanced coursework instead of external post-secondary options, increase the retention rate of RMS 8th graders choosing to come to Richfield High School, and increase the amount of in-school and supported teacher collaboration time each week during the school day. So I wanted to share with you our data to date. And so for the first objective, increase the enrollment of in-school support courses. For school year 2016-17, we had 58 students enrolled in our in-school support courses, and those courses were just our accelerated math and accelerated English classes. Those classes just provided support for our students in algebra as well as in 9th grade English. But this year, last year we had 200 students in our goal was to have 200 students, excuse me, in our in-school support courses. And what you see right now is that we actually have 587 students enrolled in support courses. And you're gonna see that we expanded what support means and what it looks like in Richfield High School, but we have certainly exceeded our goal. The next objective, increase enrollment of in-school advanced courses, honors, college and schools, and advanced placement. Last year we had 940 students in our advanced courses. Our goal this year was to have 1,000 students in our advanced courses, and we actually have 1,791 students in our advanced courses. Objective 3, increase equity of access to enrichment courses, and we did that by expanding our school day from a 6-period day to a 7-period day. And for some students, they may take 8 courses depending on their AB classes during our 9th and 10th hours of the day. Number 4, increase equity of access to advanced courses, and I'm going to share that data on another slide. But we have seen an increase, a significant increase in our students of color accessing our advanced courses. Objective 5, increase number of students accessing Richfield advanced coursework instead of external post-secondary options. Our goal was to have 10 part-time students in PSEO and 15 full-time students, and as you see, we have 12 PSEO students that are part-time and 15 full-time. Increased retention rate of RMS 8th graders choosing to come to RHS. Our goal was to move to 87%. Actually, 94% is here, but I have to check that number again before I say that it's actually 94%. So let me get back to you on that number. And then the last objective is to increase the amount of in-school and supported teacher collaboration time each week. We went last year from 0 minutes during the school day. The goal was to move to 125 minutes, and we do accomplish that with our collaborative time, PLC time, and our staff meeting times that are devoted to professional development. So if you look at the enrollment of our students by ethnicity, we really had a significant push around ensuring that more students that represented Richfield High School were actually accessing our rigorous courses. We found initially that we did not have proportionality, and rather we had disproportionality when it came to the number of students or percentage of students accessing our rigorous courses, especially our students of color. But if you look at, I just pulled some courses that we offer right now, and if you look at the percentages, you see, and what I'm most proud of, is seeing a more representative percentage of our Latino students accessing some of our rigorous courses. Our Latino students previous to this school year were the least represented students in our rigorous courses, yet they make up 40% of our school population. However, we're seeing here more of a representative group of those students taking accessing our rigorous courses, and we're seeing more proportionality around our white students accessing our rigorous courses as well. So that is that information by ethnicity. And there's another data point. 2015-16, we had 768 students accessing our rigorous courses. That roughly was 59% of those students were white and 41% were students of color. In 2016-17, we had 940 students, and this year we have around 1,700. And so when I looked at that looking at class sizes of 30 students, we had in 2015-16, 26 classes of 30, 2016-17, 31 classes, but in 2017-18, we've grown to 59 classes of class sizes of 30 of students taking our rigorous courses. When we look at the students who are in our support courses, and we expanded our support, so beyond just math support and reading support, we expanded support to include support around some of the rigorous courses that we offer at Richfield High School, because not only do we want our students to access those courses, we want them to be successful and feel successful when they access those courses. And so This team of people, along with members of our instructional leadership team, as well as a task force of teachers from our building, work together as a department and as teams, and we created some support courses to help our students in some of those courses that they find most difficult. This is a sampling of some of the courses, and we call these courses seminar courses. And so we offer an AP English seminar, an early college math and early college reading seminar, which Megan will talk more about, AP Geography seminar, AP World History, Chemistry, and upper level science seminar. And you can see of the students who requested those support courses, this is the percentage of those students who were actually enrolled in those courses. Where we see there was difficulty of students accessing courses were specifically around our highest math and our higher science classes. And we attributed that to either attrition or, and when we saw a conflict with the student schedule around them accessing the support and getting all of their requests that they registered for or requested in their, on their registration form, we had a conversation with those students and they ultimately made a choice of whether they wanted to take the support course or they wanted to take some other, I would say, rigorous course with limited offerings during the school day. And so here you see the percentages of those students who were actually able to access those courses and take them along with the more rigorous course that they are taking. Megan is going to talk a little bit about our seminar support course audit work that we've done recently.
And just real quick before she speaks, so Principal Latanya Daniels and then instructional coach Megan Stetcher is about to present. We also have Assistant Principal Teresa Rosen. We have Assistant Principal Carrie Vala. We also have Athletic Director Dave Boyd. Go ahead, Megan.
Thank you, Superintendent Lucy. Good evening. I'm an instructional coach, and a lot of my work this year is focused around our supporter seminar courses as well as our early college programming. So last spring with my team, we had all supporter seminar teachers do a training to help make sure that we had common alignment on the goals that we want to see in our support classes. So this fall, when school kind of got started, I went through and did an audit of what teachers are actually doing in these courses and what students are doing. So that's the data that you're looking at up here. And we had teachers focus on 3 specific goals to ensure that students are getting the support they need in the seminar courses. So they were working at making sure that teachers were aligning to the standards and pulling out those difficult concepts in the standards. Maybe doing skill enrichment, so if students need to do writing or reading or discussion strategies to meet the standards, they have time to work on those. And then looking at the academic vocabulary within the standards to help students be successful. So when I did the audit, all teachers were definitely focused around one of these 3 goals, which was great to see, and the majority were really focusing on some of those difficult skills within the standards. And the next part of our training was making sure that we were aligning to the core instructional agreements, and the task force really wanted to look at how teachers were using the guided practice portion of our lesson plan to ensure that we were meeting all the needs of students within the support class. And when I did the audit, it looks like teachers were having all students work on a task that was aligned to what they were doing in their rigorous or difficult course, but all students were doing the same task. So based on this data, our team will be doing some professional development around making sure that teachers can utilize differentiation strategies so we can meet varying needs within a support class or the core course so that all students are getting what they need. And then the other thing we noticed is that while teachers had clear goals that they were teaching in the seminar class, and I could tell as an instructional coach, there seemed to be a lack of student understanding around what the purpose of the activities were in support. So we'll also be helping teachers making sure that they're communicating the purpose of what they're doing in these support courses to students so students can see an alignment between what they're doing in their core class and support. Are there any questions on our support audit data before I move on to early college?
I do have a clarifying question, and I apologize if I just missed it in your explanation, but can you say what aligned teaching point not observed really means? Because that feels like a very high number in comparison to aligned teaching point observed.
Absolutely. So when I went in, if I did not see a teaching point or like a learning outcome posted on the board or communicated by a teacher, I didn't mark it.
Okay.
So that number is probably lower than it actually is, but when I go into like a regular regular AP class, it usually is posted in a line. So that's something that we'll need to work on as a staff, is making sure that not only do they have the ID in their head, it's communicated on the board or on a PowerPoint and communicated verbally to students so they're aware of what they're doing. And I think part of that is sometimes teachers will have like 3 to 4 teaching points within one support session. So I think they just need some professional development around how they can develop those teaching points. Yep. Any other questions? All right. The next thing I want to talk about is our early college programming. And just in review, last year we began the steps to build our early college programming. And the point of it is to target our students in the academic middle to give them the opportunity to earn an associate's degree by the time they graduate. So last year we did a lot of work looking at data and identified 125 ninth graders that scored in the academic middle based on their math and MCA scores. And this year, our goal was to give them the early college reading and early college math support classes to help them be ready to take a concurrent enrollment class the following year, school year 18-19. So, as you know, we have a lot of AP and CIS courses that are more targeted for our higher performing students. And we are partnering with Normandale to offer courses that are designed for the academic middle students. So this year I'm working with our early college reading teacher and our early college math teacher to help boost our students' math and reading skills so they're ready to take a concurrent enrollment class the following year. And because all of our freshmen are taking AP Human Geography, we're also focusing our reading course on building skills for that class as well. So while I'm working with teachers on that, our administrative team is working behind the scenes to extend our partnership with Normandale, and our hope is to have some Normandale classes added to our schedule in the next few years. Any questions on that? All right.
I'm Teresa Rosen, assistant principal, and all right, so we did change our start time as well besides the structure. So the students went from having 6 class periods a day to having 7 class periods a day. It did decrease the length of those classes by 6 minutes. However, we extended the school day by 20 minutes so that we did gain some educational time. So we still have a good amount of time to have them in the classroom. And with that, we did change the start time of the school day from 8:10 to 8:30. So we used to be 8:10 to 2:40, and now we are 8:30 and extending it 20 extra minutes, we now go to 3:20. So it's quite a different school day change for them. Our teachers were in the past teaching 5 of 6 classes, and now they teach 5 everyday classes, and then a 0.5, which means they teach a class that's every other day. So some days they teach 5 classes, and some days they teach 6 classes. A lot of those every other day classes are the seminar classes. So, the students have received more opportunities to take more elective courses as well, and so we increased our requirements along that as well. So the teachers have the opportunity, as Tanya said before, to use some of that extra time. And we also scheduled all of our teachers into common prep times. So the math department has all preps at the same time, so they can use school day time to do PLCs, social studies, English, all of the core areas have the same prep time. So PLCs now meet during the school day, collaborative time is done during the school day. Some of them do them on their AB days. So it's really allowed them a little bit more freedom to do that as well. So what we have learned is with our start time, and we had hoped that this would happen, and actually we have it happening, is that less students are late to school per day, because 8:30 is later than 8:10, and it does help, at least to start with. We were hoping to see an average increase in daily attendance rate, which I'm going to share with you, and that the students had more choices for the support and the electives both. So here's some data that we've just been able to collect for the month of September that we're very pleased with. Last year for the month of September, we had 89.2%, and that's in red, if you can see the number there, 89.2%. Average daily attendance for September, which, as you can imagine, that's pretty low. Actually, disturbing that 10% of our kids miss on a daily basis. And this year we are at 93.1. Our goal was 95, so we didn't meet our goal yet, but certainly a big difference. We are also seeing 50% better attendance, a 50% better attendance rate in our first hour of the day. So that is helping as well. So that didn't happen on its own. I was part of a group that worked with some attendance interventions, and so I'm just going to read you a few things that we did differently this year to bump up our attendance to make that happen. Every home received a personalized letter to each student sharing the numbers of days that they missed last year compared to, so that they could look at what our school goal was, that we want no more than 9 days total, and they could compare how they did last year. We gave a lot of information to our teachers about how students did in attendance last year. We've always had some automated phone calling systems that go out to parents, but this year what we did is we actually asked all of our teachers to make phone calls home to 9th graders to give them a personal phone call about attendance and tell them to come to the orientation, come to open house, and just share with them our goals for attendance and to just really do a personal reach out as well. Lots of other little things that we're doing, things like closing the breakfast at a certain time so that students get to class, and closing doors so that it's a clear message to parents, because that's part of who drops them off, that we need your students here before 8:25 if they're going to be sitting in their classroom at 8:30. And so these are small tier 1 interventions that we're using. We have weekly meetings with our support services staff to take a look at current attendance trends and how students are doing, and then to pinpoint some students who need extra intervention. The guidance counselors, social worker are meeting with students to come up who had poor attendance last year to come up with contracts. I mean, we have a lot going on with trying to improve the attendance rates. And those are all what we call tier 1 interventions. And obviously in tier 2, we still continue to do things like file truancy, and there's this social worker has a caseload of students that she monitors regularly, and things like that. We have an upcoming intervention that teachers just got reminded of it again today, that as we head into parent-teacher conferences, which are next Thursday, they are to call the home of any student who has missed 4 or more days so far, because it means that they're already at risk for attendance. So they'll be making personal phone calls. So if a child's missed 4 full days, they could get many phone calls. So hopefully the message will be pretty strong that we need to hear. So I think that's.
Hi, I'm Carrie Balla. I'm the new AP at RHS, and I'm excited to share with you the work that we're doing in PLCs. We're calling our structure for PLCs a simultaneous tight and loose. Tight being tight on time. So what our expectations are for our PLCs is a 50-minute PLC common preparation per week. That's where, as Teresa mentioned, the release time for the departments allows them to meet, look at assessments, look at formative data that they've collected, look at curriculum, and match the needs of the students. We also are expecting one 50-minute collaboration common preparation per week. Some of these groups are the same groups, and others are choosing to meet with their special ed counterparts for EL support to really infuse those supports into the curriculum that they're teaching. We also expect, that's not on here, content-alike teachers to be delivering the same curriculum. So it is an expectation if you teach a AP World History that you're meeting with your AP World History counterpart to make sure that regardless of teacher, children are getting the same content. So the first thing we did with our folks is just norm language around what it means to prepare together. Kept the language of common preparation and collaboration to mirror the elementary schools and middle schools, so I'm sure you're familiar with that process. And then Megan and myself are working to support our new PLC structure with coaching and feedback on the teams and their plans for the school year. So right now, they're developing their goals that will guide their work throughout the year. We'll sit down as a team and review those goals, and then they're going to backwards design what their time will look like to achieve their goals. So as leaders, Our goal this year is to create high-functioning PLCs as quickly as humanly possible to increase our instructional effectiveness at RHS.
Carrie, one quick, just to make sure, because I think there are probably people here who don't know what PLC stands for.
Sure.
Professional Learning Community.
Community, yep, professional learning community. The collaboration groups look just a little bit different. They can include more people and have a little bit different of a focus, but PLCs are anchored in the six-step data process. Good question. Others? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Boyd, I'm the athletic director. I'm just going to give you a report in terms of an update where we are in terms of participation and some other kind of big picture things that we want to accomplish this year within the athletic department. So this is our participant rates for each sport for the fall. You can see it's broken down by sport. We had big gains in boys soccer. Part of that is we had moved some 8th graders up, so we were able to do 4 teams. So you'll see some of the middle school boys soccer numbers are down a little bit. Overall, we're up, but that's part of the boys soccer. Girls soccer is a real true increase of 14 students, a couple middle school students in there. But we have a very large number of girls out for soccer now. That is their first or second year in the sport, and they've come make up a C team for us. In the past, we've just had varsity JV. This year, we're trying to C team as well. Girls swimming down a little bit. No big reason other than you had graduating seniors last year in terms of that. No big change in terms of girls that were out that aren't out that are still in school. And another big increase in volleyball, especially our 9th grade team. So we've gone from about 20 students to close to 25, 28 students, I think, on the 9th grade level. So again, we've had an expanded opportunity for our 9th grade B students as well. Middle school, again, big changes in terms of football. They've done a nice job to get those numbers back up. We've really worked to increase communication to get that out to students, to get them excited about that. Boys, again, boys soccer, you can see is one of the biggest changes there, but part of that was those students that went up into the high school program. That, again, the idea there was to provide more opportunity. It allowed us to have 4 full teams at the high school level, plus still maintain 2 teams at the middle school level. So we went from 5 teams for the most part last year to 6 this year. So looks like a negative. I think it's positive overall. Girls soccer up a little bit, tennis the same, and volleyball down. Volleyball again seems to be a sport right now that really goes up and down for us. Part of that I think is we don't have a strong youth program. There is no Richfield volleyball program where we say, you know, we can see trends and see and have opportunities to go out and recruit kids at a younger age. And so our middle school program really is that first spot in which we start recruiting students. So we have some successes. Again, last year we did a good job, down a little bit this year, but working on that. Working on coach's handbook and putting everything together. Most of this stuff, again, other than our discipline policy, which is new, is there. We've done passed a lot of checklists, which coaches like, and we'll still continue to do that and as the season gets started for them. But really putting all of our policies, practices in place in one there. So again, a lot of the information is not new, but in one spot. One spot that I think we need to work on is the philosophy purpose statements. That you'll see later on in the presentation is where we'll get to this year and coming up with our purpose as an athletic department and be upfront with that. One big initiative we're looking at this year is trying to become the inside-out school. This is done through the Minnesota State High School League and the Why We Play initiative. So 3 big steps in that, and the school board is actually part of step 2 in that, and we'll talk about a little bit at that time, but that'll be down the line for you and for us to look at. So step 1 is to talk about the difference between goals, purpose, and purpose statements with our coaches. High School League, part of the Why We Play is really talking about a common language in terms of goals. and the goal of a sport. It might be to win a conference championship or to get better at serving or all of those things. And all of those things are important. And winning is one of those goals that we have, whenever we try sport. But really looking at the deeper purpose of why we play. Why do coaches coach? Why do players really come out and participate? I'm not big on stories, but I talked to the girls' soccer team and I asked them that question. We were trying to describe the difference between a goal and purpose. They were having some communication issues and everything was about, well, we want to win, we want girls to do better, and all of that is fine. But we talked about why do you really want to be here? Because the reality, I said, do we think we're going to win a conference title? No. Do they think you're going to win a state title? No. So there's a reason you're here. And we talked about those things. But the story I asked, I said, we talked about goals. I said, is winning a game a good goal? And I could tell they thought they were getting a trick question. They thought, oh, he's not about winning. There's a wrong answer. We don't want to say we want to win. And we talked about, of course we want to win. Of course that's why we work and put time. And we're not shying away from wanting to win contests. But talked about the purpose, the deeper meaning, and went around and had a great discussion on that. So I want to bring that language to all of our coaches, to all of our programs, and especially out to the community. So our parents understand what is the purpose, why do kids play, and looking at those things. It's not simply about, hey, we want to play so we can make the varsity, we want to play so we can someday get a scholarship to play. It's looking at how can we develop character, how can we develop academically and socially within the athletic realm. Second step in that is to define success with the school board. So part of this down the road is we'll ask the school board there's a video, about a 20-minute video they'll watch and talks about this initiative. It'll talk about looking at your purpose statements and what is the purpose statement for you, and at that point we will have coaches that come up with our purpose, but it'll really be a chance for us to present those to you. I'll bring coaches in to talk about what individual their purpose statements are, and then look at success and come up with a definition for success for our coaches, because I think there's that definition for success is all over the board, and that goes across society. That's not an issue within Richfield, that's an issue within all sports and with all it. And knowing that we don't define success simply by winning and losing. We don't define success by how many kids go to Division I. We don't feel like. What is it that we're going to define success? So we will be bringing a proposal to the school board with the hope that in working with the school board, we can come up with a definition for success for our coaches. And then the next step then would be to create a job description. So when we tell coaches, how are we going to define you as a successful coach? Right? We know we have the support of the school board, the community in general, to do that. And then the third part would be to tie their evaluation into that definition of success. And then the last step, assuming we can get through all of these steps this year and go through and get approval from the Inside Out board, I shouldn't say board, but the Inside Out group in which I work on. I meet with them monthly. We have a group of athletic directors that go through and are working on this initiative. We are in schools. But the goal then would be become an Inside Out school. And what that does then next year is gives us access to a curriculum in terms of character and leadership development for our athletes. So once our coaches have gone through and done this, now how can we bring it down to the student athlete level? And so that is the point of the Inside Out. That's what we're looking to do this year. So there'll be more on terms of your role in that and schedule and timeline for that. But what that means for the coaches is obviously we have a curriculum. We are meeting now once a month. So in the mornings before school, coaches, completely optional, but just knowing the coaches, knowing they will be very much excited about this, we're going to get a pretty good improvement. But we're going to look at this Inside Out curriculum, 2 lessons a time, and so we will get through that. That is part of our job, one of our missions in becoming Inside Out school. We will also be doing a book study on Inside Out coaching by Joe Herman. Joe comes to our meetings once a month. Joe's a national figure in terms of the purpose of athletics and looking for that. We'll also have just the opportunity to communicate. One of the difficult parts of a coaching staff is we have a number of teachers that are on staff as teachers, but we also have a number of staff that aren't. And this would be a good opportunity for us to get together to streamline our communication, the messages, from them getting to me and the messages from me getting to them. We've got an opportunity in place to do that. So we've got a few other things we're going to do that. And that goes apart with the last goals to build a department. I feel like there's a number of coaches that don't know each other. And one of my goals is to say we've got an athletic department. That means we're here to support one another, to help each other learn, grow, and excel as we get through this. So that was one of the things that came, it's a goal of mine, but the nice part is that was one of the goals that the staff talked about. They talked about, so where do we need to go as a department? One of the first things is we need a department. Instead of Dave Boyd, the athletic director, working with all the different programs and coaches, what can we do collectively to promote our activities and our needs? Another initiative has to do with leadership, looking at the role of leadership within our programs. So in conjunction with our conference and region schools, there's a gentleman by the name of Craig Hillier who comes out and does very interactive leadership workshops for our high school captains. He's got a book that he goes along, or he's always trying to sell his book to us, but that's okay. It's good. It's very good in terms of that. But he goes on and it's fun games, fun activities that, again, we fool them into having fun and then talk about what is the leadership lesson of this and what does that specifically mean to you as a high school captain. We started this last year. Again, I think we've got rough count. We had about 40, 45 students that went through this training last year. We hope to get through just about as many this year in terms of that. So we will continue to work on that. And the other piece that I'd like to add is a coaches and captains workshop. So this would be before the winter season, meeting with the coaches and captains and talking about and really defining that role of leadership. Part of that is kind of coming up with commitments. And I think that it's mostly culture. What kind of culture as an athlete do you want to build? And then the second part of that is leadership. What does it mean to be a leader on this team? It's a great, I used to do it with my baseball program, started doing it the last couple of years. Probably one of the best things I think I've done as a head coach and just in terms of setting the stage for the rest of the season. So on, bring those things to our programs. Basketball's been doing it for a while, boys basketball. And lastly for me, actually meeting tomorrow morning with Community Ed. There was community education got a grant to look at participation and participation barriers. I'm very much using the language they've got. They're the group that went through and did that, but they had money, and so they did a very extensive study on what kids are participating, what are the barriers to participation in terms of youth athletics. And so the next step, one of the next steps of this is to meet with the high school coaches to look at what can we do then as a high school or a school system to help promote students. We talk about wanting to increase participation at the middle school and high school levels. One of the things we know is if the earlier we can get them, the better. If we can get students, a diverse group of students into activities in their younger, obviously the odds of them joining our programs at the middle and high school are going to go up. So we're going to meet tomorrow to kind of look at goals of what we want to accomplish. One thing we'd like to do is like a youth sport summit. So can we get everybody in town together to really figure out what are some things that we can do as a community to get more kids out for athletics. And also look at then what is our summer program, working with Community Ed to say, is there a way we can do our summer programming so we can get more kids out, so we can work in relationship to our summer school schedules and put everything together. We can have a brochure pamphlet so we give parents and say, here are your opportunities for the summer. Depending on what age, high school, middle school, here's the camps, here's what time, some scholarship opportunities. So again, so finances is not an obstacle for kids participating in the summer. That's it. Oh, no, sorry. I knew I was missing something. Last thing, working on branding, and I'm working in relationship with Miss Daniels, who we've been talking about this in the spring of last year and kind of working with some companies and some people looking at branding the high school. And what I mean by branding is if I showed pictures of a Michigan M or a Minnesota M or a Arizona A, people see those and they see those symbols and really know what it is. And looking at how we brand ourselves, if you went around just within the school day and counted how many different R's that we use, both around the school and at our uniforms and our programs and in pamphlets, everything that we do, we've just got a huge number of R's. We have a hard time defining our cardinal red. We've got maroon, I've heard of the maroon, the Spartans. So really look at trying to take all of our symbols, colors, and put them into a nice, neat package, so when we give coaches or people in the community and say, hey, you want to create a t-shirt, you want to put something on a uniform, here's what it is, here's what color it should be. If you're going to use an R, this is the R that you're going to use. If it's going to say, Spartan basketball, then you know what, it's going to say Spartan basketball, and that's going to look very similar to Spartan football when we see those logos. So trying to clean things up in terms of our school and in terms of, so when people see these things, they understand that's Richfield. That's not just some arm. So we're working on that. So we've got a committee put together there, and I was just talking to Mr. Unowski tonight about where do we go once we come up with some recommendations going further. So, and I'm not, just, I know the rumor out there that Mr. Boyd wants to get rid of the Spartan head. That's not my agenda at all. I've heard that multiple times. So I'm not trying to destroy any history. All right.
Can I just quick ask, there's a slide in our packet at the beginning about the shift in the start and end time and practices and games. Can you touch on that?
Sure. Part of that was, I think, was just left over from last fall's that way. But in just terms of, are you looking for an update on where we, in terms of an update in terms of where we are, in terms of fall and winter, I just want to make sure I'm answering your question.
Yeah, so there were a few specific sports where there were challenges with getting students.
Yep, so one of the sports was gymnastics. I was just over 2 weeks ago over at our Richfield Gymnastics RGC, talking with them in terms of what does a practice schedule look like. Talking with our new head coach in terms of how can we make this work, what is this going to look. Part of this starting at not being able to start realistically till 4 over there butts us up with their classes and kind of their prime time. They're a tremendous group to work with. Obviously, many of their employees are former Richfield Gymnastics, and so they, I think, very much take care of us, want us to be successful, and have found ways to do that. So what that means is there probably, I think, 2 nights a week we are going to have late practice, which for our sports is not, it's that 5 to 7 range, which we already do for basketball, which we already do for, we'll do downhill. So that's the fix there. I think Monday nights we're not going to practice, but we've got the availability of going in Saturday mornings. So that's where we are with gymnastics. Again, I think it's going to work some adjustments in terms of schedules, but I would think just as many parents that struggle to get over to the middle school, especially to get those students out to Richfield Gymnastics after school, having later practices might alleviate some of that pressure for them. So that's where we're at there. In terms of downhill skiing, we're still looking at the 5 to 7 time slot. I was just put a note in here and talk to Maria to make sure that's still the case for them. But I assume, I've heard nothing to do that. What Gil said we can do, that's what Maria Kimmis, our downhill skiing coach, thought would work for us. So that is still the plan there. Golf, still the plan. They said they'll make it work. It obviously puts a little more pressure on their schedule, but with the numbers and our history at Bristol Lake Golf Course, they were sure to say they'll make it work for us to still be out there.
Okay. Do you all have any questions?
I always have questions. And also, Matthew, I'd love to hear if you have reactions or questions, because I know you live this way more than we do. So not to put you on the spot, but just if there's anything that you want to share. And it's okay if you don't.
I guess the one thing I was kind of wondering is, or I don't know if it was something I kind of noticed and I kind of wanted to ask about it and just see. So I understand that athletics like sometimes may like cut into the end of the day. Does that have anything to do with like most of the core classes being offered in the first like 4 hours of the day or like towards the beginning of the day? Because I've noticed that if you wanted to double up on a science course or something like that, it's not usually possible anymore because all of the courses are offered in like the same like especially towards like the beginning of the day. And so I was just curious as to how that like happened.
So is the question about when our core classes are offered?
Yeah, are the core classes all like offered towards the beginning? Is that just something I'm noticing?
No.
Or?
No, our core classes are actually spread throughout the day. We initially worked to try to offer all of our core classes at the beginning of the school day. So if students were involved in athletics, they would not, and they had an early dismissal, they wouldn't have to miss part of a core class to go to a game or et cetera. But in building the schedule with the constraints that we had, it did not work out that way. So we do offer core classes from period 1 through period 10.
Okay. That's just like, from what I've asked around, maybe it's just people on around, but that's how I had seen it.
Periods 9 and 10 are A/B sessions, so those are the only times when we have the every other day classes that meet. So there are more electives and seminar classes in the master schedule for that reason. And during those times.
So in that one slide, it did talk about cross-country and when their meets were, and that they were having early release. So are there students or are there sports where we are having early release where kids are missing their last hour? So how have we kind of looked at what those classes are, how that might affect things, how many days these kids are missing?
We're looking at, I mean, the reality, but the bad thing with cross country is most of their meets start at 3:30. And that's something that's multi-team, so we don't have the options to really look at it. Well, let's find some meets that start later when most of them start at that time. We don't really have any leverage to move things back to accommodate us. So the reality is when we have cross-country meets, we talked about doing as many Saturday ones as we can, and we've got a few of those in the schedule. But the reality is when we have a cross-country meet that starts at 3:30, those kids are getting out at 2:30. We've squeezed down the amount of time we've given the kids to get out of school, to get on the bus, get over there and do their warm-up. And so we've condensed that as to keep kids in class as much as possible. But the reality is when we do have cross-country meets, they do miss most of their last day.
And that's probably not the only sport that will happen with throughout the full year.
Correct.
So I'm wondering, do we have a plan or anything in place to help these students or, to help them navigate that and figure out how they're going to succeed in a 7th-hour class if they're missing it once or more a week?
The big part of this is to make them a part of that accountability and knowing that, in terms of your job as a student then is to do whatever you can to keep up. And the reality is if you're falling behind and you can't make a track meet or a cross-country meet because of that, then you've got that option to do that. Those kids are always free to do it. Again, do we have any great systems in place right now that I'd say, yep, we can do that, other than we continue to monitor those kids' grades. We send out those messages to teachers to let them know if these students are missing that last hour. If you notice we're having dips in work completion, they're getting behind, to notify us so we can work with coach to figure out to keep them in class and do that. Because obviously the academic learning in that last hour is still our priority. And I know sometimes it looks like a contradiction when we say we pull them out of class to go to these different events, but that's what our teachers need to know, that's what our students need to know, and that's what our families need to know.
No, and I think we all value that, what the students get from the sports too. It's all important, but the priority has to
And it's a
be-
balance. And
Yeah.
I said that there's no, just see, I mean, our coaches don't like early releases. That's not something they do lightly. That's not something they just say, hey, it's no big deal. We're going to pull our kids out because we want to get there and have all of this time before. That's not their situation. And part of having a lot of teachers within our coaching staff, that's easy to promote because they understand the end result of pulling kids out from the same class, even multiple times in a week, is a barrier. And that's something, like I said, they don't take lightly when they do that. They don't. So.
I would say I probably have a series of questions that go almost all the way back to the beginning, and specifically talking about the racial representation that we have in our courses. And I think it's wonderful to celebrate the very significant progress that has been made. I think it's exciting to see, because I think all of us have that as something that we care a lot about and realize is very important. That being said, there are still real gaps, in some classes more than others, certainly, which is very striking. So I guess one question is, how are we going to continue to address the racial representation gaps in some of those classes? I am also really thinking, what are we doing to make sure that our students who are in these rigorous courses, especially for the first time, are able to thrive and succeed in the courses themselves and not just relying on what's happening in the seminars? And I'm thinking about, these classes are significantly more racially diverse than they have ever been. So what is happening in the class period to support our kids and support the teachers who are teaching our kids?
So I'll start with, to address the gap. What we've learned, and actually what I've seen in my career, is that students who are typically not represented in rigorous courses, who are not historically represented in rigorous courses, they simply need permission. Permission to walk through that door. They need an invitation to walk through that door. And we've worked as a school to create an environment where we extend the invitation. And we've done that work through our registration process. And, quite frankly, when I look at the increase in our Latino representation in our rigorous courses, I was very pleased with the progress. And honestly, last year, I just called it out and said, these are the numbers. We do not see you enough in our most rigorous courses. It was not about embarrassing them or shaming them, but it was making them aware that we were aware that they are not present, and they make up 40% of our school. So we want to see them walk through those classroom doors and be successful. And just through being very transparent and open about where we are as a school and where we want to go as a school as far as a proportional representation of our students in these classes, our Latino students walk through the door. Now, to address your next question, yes, we do have gaps, and we also have concerns, or we're also aware of the environments that those students are walking in, because in Richfield, most of those honors or advanced students have traveled in a cohort since their elementary grades. And so then they land in high school, they are very well gelled and connected as a group of students. And now you have LaTanya Daniels or you have Matthew Kiflu walk through the door. And so how do we, extend a warm and welcoming invitation to a LaTanya Daniels or Matthew Kiflu? And what we've talked about as a staff is, this year we are about the equity work. And we have made it very clear, I have made it very clear in my message to the staff, that it is so important that we are ensuring that each of our classrooms are welcoming and that our school is welcoming to all students. And we are to be observant of what we see, the dynamics in the class. And if we see a student, not being successful, it is our responsibility as the professionals to go to that student and work with that student to, as Dave said, get that student on track. And it's also our responsibility when we see students isolating a Matthew who may be new in the class, to disrupt that. I have made that very clear. My team can let you know that I made that very clear during our opening workshop week, that we, despite what happens external to Richfield High School, it is a moral imperative for us as high school staff to be observant, to be prudent, and when we see things that are happening that are unjust, and I had a very candid conversation with the students about it, that we are to disrupt that. We cannot any longer ignore the elephant in our room or the elephant in our school. We're going to call it out. And so we are working. Matthew attended an equity forum with me in Bloomington. He was also a part of Reimagine Richfield work with us 2 weeks ago. So this work is moving aggressively forward as possible. at our high school. And so I put responsibility on classroom teachers to be responsible for those new faces in the classrooms. And also with the support of our admin team and our instructional coach, we are working with teachers to differentiate for the ranges of students that are in the classes as well. Is there anything that you want to add to that we're doing?
Principal Daniels, one thing I think that you missed was your statement about celebrating where you are. You did talk about the work that is still to come, but I think it's important to now acknowledge that 2 years ago, these courses were populated by approximately 60% white students. Through the efforts of transformation, those numbers have changed significantly. And just by point of comparison, our district is about 28% white students. And so while we still do see an underrepresentation of students of color and an overrepresentation of our Caucasian and white students, that has changed significantly. It's something your team has a lot to be proud of.
And actually, just that there's a legacy. There's one skeleton still here. The calculus course.
Yep.
The math curriculum among all the curricula is linked together from freshman to sophomore to junior to senior year. You don't happen to opt into a calculus course typically, in my experience. And so the calculus course and the advanced algebra courses will be the ones that will indicate to me that we've made more overt progress because that one is so dependent on the predecessor course, whereas the others have prerequisites, but they're not. AP World History does not require something that you've taken previously.
Which we know goes back to what happens in elementary and
Correct.
what happens in middle school, and that's why we're using our collaborative time, our common planning time during the school day, collaborative time, to ensure that we have created a backwards aligned curriculum so we can create opportunities for students to accelerate. I mean, it's important for parents to see on-ramps for their students, and so we have to start creating those on-ramps for students, not at the high school, but we need to go back to elementary as well. Yeah, we do have a summer acceleration math program as well. Thank you, Teresa.
I did have one other question, still in this same theme. A question that I've been asked is, with the push and the focus on increasing the participation in rigorous courses, which again, I fully believe in and think it's important, I do think it's also important to ask the question, what has the impact been on our quote-unquote regular classes? And are expectations different? Are we seeing concerning representation gaps in our quote-unquote regular classes because of the work that we're doing focused on the rigorous courses? So you may not have an answer to that right now, but I've heard that be asked, and so I wanted to make sure that I asked it.
That's something good for us to check into. So no, I don't have data on what's the impact in our regular courses, but a message that I just recently sent to teachers was that, no matter the course, every course has standards aligned to it. And our standards in Minnesota are quite rigorous. And so as a teacher, you set the ceiling and the floor in your class. And so you either have high expectations for your students, and you expect for them to reach them, or you have low expectations for your students. My expectation as the principal, knowing that I set the ceiling and the floor in my school, is that I'm holding them accountable for setting high expectations for students. And so I would hope that when I look at the data, I don't see any concerns around this shift from students taking our normal classes or just regular classes versus our advanced classes. But seeing as I go from classroom to classroom, that teachers still have high expectations, the expectations and the work that's happening in their classroom, they're aligned to state standards, and we're holding all kids accountable for reaching those standards.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions. One is about the length of day. So with the length of day and the time shift, the whole day ends that much significantly later. And so has there been any concern or any issues raised about students who need after school time and the people who work in the school being strained and that they're in the buildings, or their days have shifted later and they may have life outside of school. Our staff probably does. And so are they impacted by that, or has access for after school support or help been an issue at all?
I'm not aware of the impact on teachers because we have an extended, I'm aware of the impact on teachers because we have.
You may have heard once.
You're right, right. But by us having a later day, no. that piece, you know, how that impacts, you know, their life outside of school, no. I will say that Richfield High School needs much development on what we offer after school for students. And that is a push that actually Mike Harris is making as our Richfield president. I think that, yes, we build supports during the school day with our seminar support courses, but we also need to extend opportunities systematically, I will say systematically, after school, so we're providing support for students after school. And so that program, our after school program, and the supports after school, as well as fun activities like Boys and Girls Club and, you know, other types of clubs, I think those things, that needs to be developed further. It's underdeveloped as I see it, working previously in other high schools where we had very bustling after school programs. But yes, that's a work in progress.
And we do continue to offer the activity class on Tuesdays and Thursdays as we always did at again, it's just a little bit later time. And our media center is open with the computer labs for extended time for students to work in there. So those things do continue. I would say that I think we're seeing students come early in the morning, a little bit easier. Wouldn't you guys agree to do makeup work and those kinds of things?
We spend a lot of time talking about the advanced courses, but with the introduction of the extra period, there was also an opportunity for a lot of electives that aren't necessarily advanced. They're sort of within the subject areas, but not necessarily state graduation requirements.
Yes.
And so, how has the rollout of such courses been? What was the take-up rate good on them? And are staff and students mutually excited to create new courses that would be enriching, and exciting, and hopefully ignite, excitement for learning instead of a checkbox on graduation?
So when we had our parent meetings last year, there was a significant push to bring financial literacy, introduce financial literacy back into our curriculum. Parents definitely wanted to see our wood shop or woodworking program. I'm blanking on what is it? Technical.
Yeah, it's the STEAM, the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
I would say that we do offer financial literacy.
In two different areas in the business ed department, with personal finance and then living on your own in the family computer science department.
And then we also have actually we're bursting at the seams for with our wood shop program. What is it called?
Woodworking.
Yeah, woodworking program. And so those were significant pushes.
But we have like mythology and AP psychology and sports history, and lots of different types of electives for students.
CPR.
CPR is a new elective.
Yeah.
So we actually have added quite a few electives that are new and exciting. And yes, did we get students to enroll in them? Yes, they're filled, and the students are staying with it.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
So can you just clarify for me the process for students that wanted to be in a support class, a seminar class, but weren't able to get in it? I know you mentioned that kids that didn't get their classes met with their counselors, and I know personally from my own experience that those counselors worked really hard in that couple weeks before school and met with a huge number of students and walked through kind of explaining why they maybe weren't able to get a class because of sometimes the constellation of classes that they chose. And I feel like a lot of them were given that opportunity to make that adjustment for a class they didn't get. But my question more is related to, so if a student asked for a support class and didn't get it, did they just continue on to the more challenging class without the support class? Or did they choose a different class, a less rigorous class?
I think we saw both.
Instead?
I think most of them stuck with the rigorous class, though. I don't think many of them dropped it because or chose to, go to the lesser class because they couldn't get the seminars. In those cases, as much as we could possibly do, we made the seminar the priority.
I had one young lady in my head who did decide to drop down, but yeah. Any other questions? Matthew?
Okay, so I guess or like, but I was wondering, so like the increased number of like students in all these like CIS classes and AP classes, there's a cap on the number of students that can be in a CIS class because of the University of Minnesota, right?
Yes.
So are the regular classes now more filled due to the CIS courses having like a cap on the number of students? Because I'm aware that a teacher will like teach a certain number of students per day, and like I'm in a few classes that are like AP or CIS that may only have like 14 students. So I'm wondering if there are classes that have like 40 students in them or something as a result. And like, is the school planning on hiring more teachers to address that? Or
Great observation, Matthew. Great observation. Yes, we do see an imbalance in some of our core areas around who's in advanced classes and who's in our just advanced algebra. For example, geometry, we saw an increase in, and I was talking to Superintendent Unowski about this. Geometry is a 10th grade course. We are retaining our 9th graders to 10th grade, which, you know what, historically we have lost about 60 or 70 of our 9th to 10th grade students. We are retaining those students, and this past fall, over summer, we had a significant increase in 10th grade registrations for the high school. And so that meant that our 10th grade classes were overflowing. And so yes, we are hiring additional staff. In fact, Ms. Valle extended someone, a math teacher, a job here to help reduce class sizes. I'm interviewing tomorrow to find someone for social studies to reduce class sizes. But specifically for social studies, we see, yes, that cap of students in the CIS US history, but we also still see like large numbers in our just regular US history sections as well. So it depends on the area or the content area, but yes, to balance those class sizes, we are hiring additional staff people. Great question.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we will move on to reports and information from school sources and the superintendent update.
All right, so we are at the Minnesota Department of Education review and comment and discussion component of our capital facility improvement request. And so new this year is a second visit at the board level of review and comment. And what review and comment is it's an in-depth look at all of the work occurring. And in this case, it is a review and comment at all the work occurring or proposed to occur specific to capital facility improvement. You'll see in your board packet where Dr. Clarkson is just getting herself set up is a letter we received from Dr. Brenda Casilius, basically outlining the packet of materials, and it's 27 pages, so it's from page 27 through 53 of our board packet. And it walks through each of the things in relation to our capital facility bond request that you'll find on the ballot. Just a note on the second page of Commissioner Casilius' letter, to be allowed to put a request on the ballot, it needs to outline the geographic area and population to be served, a list of all of our facilities, a list of specific deficiencies of the facilities, description of the project including a multitude of areas of information, specification of the source of project financing, which obviously would have to do with capital facility funding, and then long time documentation of each of the areas of the areas in which we would work. On page 3 of what we provided to the commissioner is a detailed breakdown by building, so of our 7 buildings, the 6 schools and the Central Education Center. Each of the areas and the estimated dollar figures that would go along with that were this to be approved by voters on November 7th. And then the commissioner sent back to us, there's again 23 pages following this, which I'll give an extremely brief overview after I'm finished, where the commissioner responded in the affirmative that this was a positive review and comment, or she approves us going forward, and going forward with that request on the ballot for our voters. And so just as you see, it's a proposal for review and comment, and it was sent to the commissioner in July. And just sort of walking through, you can see a packet of information with each of those pieces in page order. Now again, as a board, we've seen this before. This was presented in full order at a previous board meeting. This is in our board packet, so for those who are watching on YouTube in the future, looking for a detail level view, this is in this particular board pack, as it was also back in the board packet back in August. And so at this time, for those in the audience, if there are any specific questions or discussion, review and comment related specifically to the capital facility component of our board packet, this would be the time for people to make comment or question in that area, or if any board members have any questions. And with that large packet, I'll give a pause of an awkward silence of 30 seconds or so.
I don't have questions, but I do agree and just want to echo, I think this is a helpful summary of what the current state of our facilities is across the district and what would be covered should that ballot question be approved by voters in November. And I know there have been a lot of questions about what specifically is that question about, what would be in scope and what would not be in scope. And so just sort of want to reiterate, this is a good resource, and I hope people will look at it. And I think it's, of course, on us to share it as people have questions.
I have one question, and apologize, I missed the August review of this. We, at some point, it's page 53 of the current packet, we've already signed off that the school district and architects, engineers have consulted with affected government units about the impact of the project. And so we have a few areas where we're talking about changing traffic flow in and out, for example, at STEM or RDLS, and so that might involve sidewalks and sewers or other things. Have we, in traffic, have we worked in concert with the city?
We have engaged in open dialogue with the city manager.
Okay.
We don't obviously have finalized plans because as you are working on a proposal phase, obviously you don't work those things out concretely. They're in,
Okay.
in that form, but absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
I do not have anything else.
Matthew, is this something that people are talking about at school? Have you heard anything about this before tonight?
Like the changes to the
Yeah, like the proposed building and facilities improvements.
No, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. I just think that's a helpful data point right there. Thank you.
All right, we will continue forward. So you will note in the board packet, Superintendent Goals, Draft 2. As we're going to do throughout the year, I'll be presenting my specific goals, progress on those, and also in relation to the strategic plan updates. We actually provided a strategic plan update. There was feedback on goals, work to refine those in relation to board feedback. And so I'm going to come back to the board with this. I'm looking to, this could be final draft, this could be draft 2. Taking a look at feedback based on the input given by board members. So just as a quick reminder, overall performance is analyzed based on student achievement-based goals, process goals, and those are things related to our strategic plan, and then obviously your overall evaluation of my individual performance and some of the specific goals outside of the larger strategic plan, but things that we are going to work on and that I am going to work on professionally to continue to improve. That broke down this year in our draft to 3 achievement goals, 8 strategic plan process goals, 4 specific personal evaluation goals, and then obviously we'll do those with a final summary evaluation, and I will continue to review those quarterly. As we look at our database, and you're going to note some addition of some smaller notations underneath our bullets, an increase of graduation rate by 3% or more, improving overall math proficiency as measured by the MCA while reducing the achievement gap, and similar to reading. The suggestion of the board was to create a larger dashboard for our district to measure future full district performance, moving beyond graduation rate, moving beyond MCA scores, and giving a larger picture, engagement, attendance, behavior. There was also disaggregation within the proposed database, and this came out of an equity dashboard shared by our board members to develop, and so that's something that will go into development and then will be utilized to look at not just the math proficiency in relation to the achievement goals, but a larger district scorecard or dashboard as we talk about. And that's something that we would work on if we move forward with this over the next set of months and become part of my regular regular feedback to the board.
Can I make probably a comment?
Yes, ma'am?
I think the dashboard is really important here so that we're able to look at a broad range of inputs across a lot of different dimensions. I know at the last meeting, I think I was one of the people who was talking about concerns with how we're measuring proficiency. And I think gap closure is important, certainly, but I think there's also unintended consequences that can happen if that is a goal. And I am not implying that you or folks in the district would do that, but you could actually close the gap by making sure that the highest kids just kind of stay where they are and don't grow. And so that is my sort of internal struggle with measuring gap closure in this particular way. And it's really hard because, as we talked about at our last meeting, there are not a lot of great, really sophisticated ways to do this, and the way that the state does this with our current system is nearly impossible to explain and understand, and is going to be, I think, going away through our ESSA plan if approved by the Federal Department of Education. So I am voicing this without a specific solution in mind, but yeah.
Understood. To reiterate the intention, as you look at improving overall math proficiency, that's to have each one of our students and have the overall proficiency grow, while obviously reducing that gap. So obviously not the intention of reducing the gap by bringing down one set of students. It's by moving everybody
Or
forward and
holding
accelerating the achievement forward.
It's not just bringing
Right.
it down.
Correct.
Holding steady is also.
Correct. So hopefully as we develop a dashboard, we will try to figure out a way to do that effectively for our district. Overall goals, and we wanted to talk about measurement because one of the clarifying pieces had to do with how would we measure. So smooth transition to 7-period day at our high school as we measure by our overall enrollment and obviously community survey feedback, which we take each spring, gathering feedback on how we're performing and gathering input from our students, our staff, and our overall community. Similarly to our transition to new start times at schools, and again, gathering community feedback and information in relation to that. Effective referendum communication would be a presentation, a qualitative report of a portfolio of our communication efforts and an update for the board. Obviously, we aren't advocates as employees of the district, and I'm not advocating in any way, shape, or form. The goal and responsibility of the district is to effectively communicate and have broad-based information shared with our communities. And then having systemic support of our new leadership and our team at STEM. So obviously, as we know, there was a pretty significant transition of the leadership and the oversight at STEM. And so we would be presenting and demonstrating the structures that were put in place to create an overall support structure for STEM to ensure that with that transition, we have a smooth and effective continuation as our work moves forward at that particular site. The next four, we're going to continue to expand and roll out staff evaluation steps forward. Looks like there is one small typo in the board packet, and so we would have a qualitative presentation from our HR department talking about the overall evaluations, which continue to extend to our paraprofessional and our clerical staff, and we continue to roll out evaluation across our entire district as we obviously moved on with systemic evaluation and QComp across our district approximately 4 years ago. Equity rollout and expansion. We've talked about it as a classroom. We've talked about Reimagine Richfield as it has morphed from Reimagine Minnesota and some of the work that we're doing across our buildings, including interrupting our GT representation cycle and our advanced coursework cycle, but a continued and ongoing presentation of our equity work for the board. Similarly, our continued curriculum review and alignment. We're in the second year of a 3-year cycle to try to overall review our curriculum and having a demonstration and presentation of our new and revised curriculum to the board. And then one of the pieces from a transparency perspective that the board had talked about is a process to walk through budgets at buildings in the spring. So not just doing that at the board level and at the district level, but also from a principal to staff to PTO to have a larger conversation at every single school site about how do we develop a budget, what does it look like, and how do we move forward with financing.
I have comments on this section
Yes.
too. One, I think in the places where it says community survey feedback, are we actually going to be asking specific questions with respect to that? So we are not just relying on people to share comments if they have them or think of them in the moment?
Yes, we do have, we can add that to our survey, and then we also do have now 2 years of longitudinal data from our community survey.
Because I think it would be helpful if we really want to measure this, that we probably need to ask specific questions about it. And then I think the second thing is there are other things in here that I think would be helpful to get community and or staff feedback on. I think the supportive new leadership and team at STEM. I would be interested to know how the folks at STEM and the families and community related to STEM are experiencing that. I think equity rollout and expansion would be another thing that I want to make sure we're hearing from people. And so I think for all of these, I guess my instinct would be to say demonstration and presentation is one aspect, and community feedback, staff feedback is another, and that both of those things should probably be represented in each one of these goals.
Right, how do we measure, how do we measure smooth?
Yeah.
Got it. So we will take a next dig
Thank
into
you.
that. Similarly, looking at personal evaluation goals, areas for my specific focus. I'm expanding and deepening the Richfield relationship, again, measured by community survey, but also looking at our market share. And that was one of the specific board comments, was to talk about how are we doing from an overall communication relationship perspective to expand our market share and see our community responding more positively to our leadership and then also our district overall. Increasing our leadership attendance and participation in extracurricular activities across the district, and maintaining a schedule regarding our level of admin presence and being able to report that back to the board. Launch of a staff parent advisory council, and the goal is to launch that in late winter, just after the new year, with providing the board updates of agenda and updates provided from those meetings, provided back to the community and to the board. And then also aligning our engagement efforts systemically throughout the organization at all levels. And so developing a calendar of district engagement efforts from the board to the admin to teachers to students, and to be able to provide and clearly share the engagement work that we're doing throughout our entire district.
I asked
Questions about that? All right, so I will go back, do a little bit more refining, try to create an additional level of clarity around superintendent goals, and I will bring those back to the board for the next level of conversation prior to finalizing, hopefully in the next couple of meetings. We have our next, we'll call it the official enrollment count. However, obviously, as we know, ADMs, or average daily membership, is what counts from a yearly basis, but I am pleased to report that our October 2 count, which is obviously one day later than the official October 1 because it's on a Monday, we're actually up 20 students from last year. Those are constituted with an expansion in funding in our pre-K program, and so we are very pleased to have expanded our pre-K program, which provides some additional stability for our organization. If you look at a school-by-school basis, we have schools ranging from RDLS, states up 37, but I want to provide a clarifying piece with that, which is that number of 37 up doesn't include the 20 new pre-K spots, which were available and are filled. So in K5, RDLS is actually up 17 students. We are down 17 at Richfield Middle School from projection, and then up 22 at both STEM and Richfield High School from our projection. And just as a reminder, projection and actual enrollment counts are different. Projection is what we base our budget on. It's based on past history of attendance trends, enrollment trends, and what we see in terms of students living within Richfield. We were projected to be down, I believe, 66 students this year. And as I said, pleased to report we're actually up 86 students this year. So we've had a successful enrollment campaign, or things had a positive outcome for us, with specifically higher than expected enrollment within kindergarten, where we're 26 up, and then obviously those spots in pre-K with 24. There are also some pretty significant highlights at our high school, where we continue to see a very significant change in the 9th to 10th grade transition. As Principal Daniels shared, about 4 years ago, we used to lose 70 students between 9th and 10th grade. That got interrupted through systemic supports to our students, reducing the failure rate and continuing to have students find greater success. And over the last 2 years, we have now broken that pattern twice And this year, it's actually led not just to a break in that pattern, but to an increase in enrollment from 9th to 10th grade, so something to be very proud of. The next update in regard to this will come with the Where We Are in Enrollment report, which actually comes a few months from now. So
December, January.
And then the next time we will also see this, what we do within our buildings at this point is we're going to take a step back. The high school talked about hiring a couple of new staff. It's actually 0.8, so it's 2 class periods in math, 2 class periods in social studies. We already made our transition with our new staff person at STEM. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back, look at enrollment, and see if there are areas to provide additional support, where I may be returning to the board for a conversation around areas where we may need some additional support in terms of staff. And we'll take a pretty significant look at that right around conferences at MEA after the staff are in place at the high school and we can do another enrollment count for our schools.
May I ask just a real quick question on this enrollment? This is specific to this enrollment, and it's just a yes or no question.
Can we talk about it after? And we need to be kind of consistent in our expectations for discussion with the board during the meeting.
So that's no. Okay.
Sorry. But I would love it if you would email, or I would be happy to
I
talk to you after.
understand. You said
Thank
no.
you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Continuing on from there then, commendations.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna, so Molly Illis, good, okay, good. One of the hard parts is always pronouncing people's names correctly, which is something that I have often with Unowski. Commendation that was sent to our board. A thank you out to Molly Illis, parent of 2 children at Richfield Middle School, and also to Richfield High School Assistant Principal Teresa Rosen for their work organizing the various school-affiliated groups comprising the Spartan Zone at Open Streets at Pennfest on September 17th. It was great to see all the Spartan spirit concentrated in one place across so many different school teams and groups. So the Spartan Zone was a 2-block square area comprised of Richfield Public Schools, Spartan Zone activities, basically representation from across our schools and activities in a wide range of group. And Molly and Teresa worked together to create that wonderful opportunity for our students and for our community to see very strong Spartan spirit. And so we were very pleased with that at Pennfest and hoping to continue the tradition into the future as we push that strong Spartan foot forward.
Thank you. So we will now move on to the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Paulus, a second by Mr. Ashmead. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the consent agenda passes. So we'll move on now to old business and board policy review, starting with policy 206, public participation and school board meetings.
All right, so we have brought back for, I believe, the 5th time, policy 206, public participation in school board meetings. And so as we reviewed, policy 203 is organization of the board, and there used to be a 2-sentence policy in relation to public comment in school board meetings. Finding that, well, that had met our needs in the past, we needed to update that policy. There was an MSBA model policy to work from, and we have done a great deal of work. We actually now had some additional input from multiple board members in regard to, we'll call it draft number 5, sort of crafting out a significant number of changes and additions to really set up a clear and transparent structure from a board policy perspective about how public comment and engagement during the official meeting time would occur. So with that, and there is a lot, so I'm not going to move this for passage today. There's been significant changes since the most recent meeting. The hope is that we would be able to perhaps pass this at our next meeting.
And maybe it would be helpful for me to share just sort of the overview of, I think, in real language, what these changes would mean in terms of public comment at our school board meetings. Because I know there's a lot of tracked changes and comment bubbles that are not even necessarily easy to see in the board packet form. So I think the overarching approach that's outlined here, and that we would make sure is very clear and accessible to the public, is that public comment happens once a month at the second meeting of the month for September through May, or the only meeting of the month for June through August. People can sign up to make public comment in advance via email, phone, or in person with Beth at the district office, or sign up at the meeting itself prior to the meeting beginning at 7 p.m. People have 3 minutes to share remarks with the board or additional time if translation is needed. Board members will not be able to respond in the moment to comments made, but are eager to hear thoughts and may follow up with the speaker directly or request an appropriate Richfield School staff member to do so. And then in the policy itself, but very much in the sort of public-friendly version of this, we want to make sure that the privacy laws are clear so that we're sharing proactively what is not legal to include in public comment remarks. So I think that's a very big section of this. A smaller but still important section is the process to go through if somebody actually wants to request a formal agenda item at a school board meeting, and the process for doing that. So that is also in this proposed policy, and any request that would be received would then be reviewed by the board chair and the superintendent and potentially brought to the full board for consideration, just to determine whether or not we should have a full agenda item about a requested topic.
I had a couple comments just having read through it. The 206 is the MSBA model number, correct?
Yes.
Because our 206 is negotiations with employee groups, so.
Just have to update
So
the
should
number.
clarify a different number than 206?
206 has been spoken for,
thank
yeah.
you.
yeah.
All right.
So,
Thank you, sir.
There's that. In section 2A, the general statement of policy, the policy of the school board is to encourage participation of citizens, or residents. And is that,
Yeah.
is that our, the residents and citizens and residents of the district? Or if someone from Minneapolis had a comment they wish to address, right, what a resident or community, or would we want to be broader and say community member? And community is pretty broad, but resident might have.
President of Richfield.
Or resident of the district. I mean, there's, you could have a staff member who lives outside of our district who wanted to bring something to the board's attention. Would we welcome that? And I think we would.
Yes.
And so, I don't know.
I will say the reason why citizens was struck out is because I think that is alienating language for
Could be.
people who may
No,
not be.
that's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah, community
legal
member,
citizens.
right, community member.
I've since heard the term resident by some is considered offensive
And
Okay.
so,
for similar
Right.
types of reasons.
so really, to encourage participation by concerned humans, I mean, we're not really bound by whatever.
No, absolutely.
Whatever geographic boundaries exist. It's just if someone wants to raise issues that are related to the management of the district, we're welcome to hearing them, is what I'm,
Absolutely.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
So I think we could just take out.
We'll find something.
We can take out actually of residents, and we could just say encourage participation in subjects related.
Sure.
That takes
Okay.
care of it.
And in Article 6, the advanced notice, do we, for someone who wishes to add an agenda item, what is advanced? The prior policy that we're replacing had advanced notice for ability to address the board, period. And so what is advanced notice for adding an agenda item? I imagine it's a higher threshold than addressing the board on a topic of interest. And so, for an agenda item, presumably we would want it to be before the formal agenda is created, for example, unless the person is willing to add it, to speak up about it and add it for future meetings or things like that. And so I don't have a remedy for you. I'm just pointing out that as I read it, that was something that struck me as loose.
And I think, I'm glad you raised that, because I think one of the reasons why it feels loose in a way that I think could be appropriate is, depending on the topic, it may take more time to prepare it.
Right.
And to determine whether
Okay.
it should be on the next agenda, or it would be 2 meetings from now, or whether it's appropriate at all.
Okay.
And so But I also hear you that if somebody wants to request something to be considered at the next board meeting, perhaps we should provide some guidance about when that type of request would need to be received in order for it to even be considered.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think so. And I forget, is there language about who would determine if the very next board meeting was not adequate notice for it, although it could, we do have agenda items that aren't action items. And so we could have something where we discussed or, and talked about the issue and perhaps propose that we hold it for another meeting as well. I don't know. I mean, that could be very frustrating for the person who brought it up if we talked about it very little and then just defer it, said, well, let's bring it to the next one. So, I don't know, just something to firm that up would be, tighten it up, so. That's all I have.
Other areas? All right, so we will take the next look at that and bring it back again. I think we might be getting close to the passage component, knock on wood.
So we will move on to policy 926, public relations involvement.
All right, so at the board suggestion, we have taken a first swing at combining the public relations 926 and the parent, student, and community involvement policy 951, taking the pertinent components of each, merging them together. I think as we talked about, there was clearly a time where it was important for us to state that public relations are an important component, and that we want to have involvement within our school district. And so, again, first swing at putting these together. Are there thoughts?
I have a couple, I think, relatively small language comments. I don't know if you would prefer for me to just send those, or if you would want me to raise them here.
We can send the language ones.
Okay, sounds good.
We currently have a written communication plan, is that correct?
I'm not 100% sure I have a clear answer to that question.
Okay. Because I think we're required to have one to maintain a written communication plan according to this policy. And probably that, I'm willing to bet that is a holdover from the predecessor. Because I can't imagine you would have been, we would have been so willfully inserting that language and that burden into it without it already having existed. So I'm not criticizing that it's not.
So we definitely need to take a look at that. I know
I'm
that
completely
we've
unaware of it as well.
Yeah. Something to absolutely look at.
Okay, so we will provide further feedback on that over the next couple weeks. And move on to policy 953, visitors to school district buildings and sites.
All right, so as we continue to work to clarify visitors to building and sites, you'll notice the one change, or the largest change that was put in. It was put in basically twice in the appropriate area. Procedures to support this policy will be developed as an addendum as outlined in section 4A. And 4A basically makes it clear that we will have procedures that are clear and are clearly communicated. So what that would mean is that if we were to pass this particular policy and this updated policy, because this is a significant change with the addition of the post-secondary enrollment option components, we would then work to align the handbooks of all of our schools for students and for parents, and then also clearly disseminate procedures in relation to visitors to school district buildings and sites. And so that would be an item in development for a board guideline, but then also for working with our school handbooks if we move this forward.
How long or on what timeline do you think the addendum would be developed? In other words, how quickly would we be able to have that and actually be able to put that into practice?
So there are already procedures in place at our schools. It's more about gathering each of those, aligning the 7 buildings, and then putting them into handbooks. I'd have to take a first look and just see how aligned we are specifically at this point. I'd say a couple of months.
Okay. This is a very small language thing, but in section 2A under general statement of policy, the first sentence is the school board encourages interest on the part of parents and community members in school programs and student activities. It felt strange to me that administration was not included there, but it just says the school board encourages. And I don't know if that is just consistent with the way other policies are framed, but it felt surprising to me that we don't have in there that our administration also encourages that.
Because we do encourage that as administration. Okay, so a couple of noted language changes. Other feedback before we bring it back for a final next meeting?
Okay. So we will give you more feedback on that. Now we will move to the change order partial roof repair at STEM. And Mr. Holge.
Very good, thank you. We have one additional change order to the partial roof repair at the STEM building. When they were removing the roof for the replacement, they found that there was more wet insulation than what they expected, so there's a $42,000 change order here that's requested for that project. It was identified in the original scope and it's been completed, but we need board approval for the authorization for the payment of that project. And that was something that was reviewed and recommended by InSpec as part of our work with them.
It was, say it again.
It was recommended by InSpec, who manages our roof projects, as something that was needed. Basically, they found there was more wet insulation when they were working on that replacement than what they originally had anticipated. When they start the project, they do testing of specific points across that roof to determine if there's moisture within that. But they found there was more moisture once they started working on that project.
With this change order, Craig, this is a significant change, right? I mean, the whole project to date was around 187, and so this
Yep.
is another 42,
Yep.
correct? So does this push this, I mean, does this project now go over its original?
It still is within the original scope of what the project was budgeted for.
Okay.
The bids came in lower and stuff like that, so there were some modifications to it, but still was within that original scope.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I move approval of the change order for the roof repair.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Ashmead, a second by Ms. Brockie. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye, sorry.
Oh,
Do you want to clarify?
No, I said aye. It was just really late.
okay. Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the motion passes. We will move on to new business and resolution appointing election judges.
All right, so at each of our meetings for an extended period of time, we'll continue to come back with pieces related to our election. So at this, we are appointing election judges. So in front of you, you have, be it resolved by the School Board, Independent School District 280, State of Minnesota, as follows. List of individuals specified on Exhibit A attached hereto, each of whom is qualified to serve as an election judge, are hereby appointed as judges of election for the school district's general and special election on November 7th, 2017. To act as such at the polling places or combined polling places established by the school district. The election judges shall act as clerks of election, count the ballots cast, and submit the results to the school board for canvass in the manner provided for other school district elections. And you have Exhibit A in front of you, a list of proposed election judges. Obviously, this is in our partnership with the city, and many of the areas where we do partner with the city, this is managed by the city of Richfield. And our role is just to take the appropriate steps for running an election. So you have that in front of you.
We'll move the resolution.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Brockie, a second by Mr. Paulus. Is there any further discussion? No, this is a resolution, so I will pull the board. Mr. Ashmead,
Aye.
Ms. Brockie,
Aye.
Mr. Paulus,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye, and the resolution passes. So we will move on to driver's ed vehicle lease.
Thank you. I have before you tonight a request to authorize a lease to be executed on behalf of the district. for one vehicle for our driver's education program. We currently have a vehicle that's on a 39-month lease. That vehicle is within 1,400 miles of hitting that maximum, at which we would start paying a penalty of 25 cents per mile. We've done some assessment of this, and we believe that the most cost-efficient way to handle this would be to turn in that vehicle at this point once those miles are expended, and then lease a new vehicle. The new vehicle would be leased with Richfield Bloomington Honda at a rate of $256 per month. Our current rate is $405 per month. We received what we believe is a significant credit given the fact that many vehicles are now being closed out, and so this is a good time to start to initiate some of these leases at this point as well. If we were to pay the penalties for the lease for what's anticipated, we would likely be overextending that miles for what the actual savings is by completing that at this point for that $256 per month. So we're asking to have me be authorized to be able to execute any of the agreements that are necessary to execute that 36-month lease agreement. One other clarification, all of the revenue that's associated with paying that is associated with the fees that are paid by participants for the program. So it is strictly a community education funded program that comes from participant fees. Those fees are what pay for that, so that fee does not come out of the general fund that would otherwise be used for classrooms or things like that.
Have we changed our annual mileage allowance?
We did increase it to 15,000 miles as part of this. I believe it was 12,000 originally. And we also have the penalty rate is 15 cents a mile instead of 25 cents a mile.
And so when you said through the work your team had determined, so really, what is it? We're about 7 months.
Yeah, so we're running about 1,200 miles a month.
Okay.
The $256 ends up being about 1,000 to 1,100 miles that you can get on that $256 payment. That does include all taxes, licenses, and fees as well. So.
Right, but we're trading in we're unloading the old vehicle about 6-7 months early. Is that correct?
7 months early,
7 months
correct.
early. Okay.
6.94, I think, is what I calculated today, but.
That's fine.
Yeah, so even with paying that $405, we believe that we end up in a positive. And the other component, if we wait 7 months and then end up leasing a new vehicle, at that point, the likelihood of us getting a vehicle that's discounted on a 2017 model is less likely for us to be able to execute that lease at that improved rate at that point.
I will move the item as recommended.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Paulus, a second by Ms. Brockie. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the motion passes.
Thank you.
So we will move on to donations.
All right, so Richfield High School received $541.82 for charitable use from a United Health Group employee with the matching funds through the Benevity Fund. It'll be deposited in the Richfield High School's Random Acts of Kindness Fund. Richfield High School also received an $8.17 donation from the Red Robin Loyalty Foundation. And finally, Renee Johnson made a donation of $50 to the Ellen Carlson Scholarship Fund established at Richfield High School for students who have been served by a special ed IEP plan. So we send out thank you to our wonderful donors.
I'll move that we accept the donations with gratitude.
I will second that.
So we have a motion by Mr. Paulus, a second by Mr. Ashmead. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and we accept these donations with gratitude. So we will move on to advanced planning and legislative update.
All right, so just a brief update for the board about AMSD, of which we are a member. So obviously I am on the legislative and executive committees of AMSD, Association of Metropolitan School Districts. We are beginning work on the legislative platform for AMSD for this particular year. And so you should anticipate at our coming meeting, I'll be engaging the board in a conversation around our legislative priorities, so we can begin that conversation prior to going back and having ongoing meetings with AMSD to help them develop their platform and have that aligned to the legislative work from Richfield Public Schools.
I went to the Minnesota School Boards Association, I can't remember what they call it, like a legislative roundup, where they shared with school board members from the region some of the changes that did happen at the legislature this past session. And then they also gave us hard copies of the Every Student Succeeds Act executive summary for what the state submitted to the Federal Department of Education. So I can leave these here for people who might be interested in reading more about that state plan or some of these things here in the legislative summary from this past session. I think some of the big things we talked about were related to the teacher licensure changes that were put into effect this past session. Funding certainly was a big topic of conversation, as always. Special education funding, the TRA pension funding seemed to be, consistent areas of concern across the school board members that were present, and also I think the legislators that were there are hearing it strongly. But I think we're also pretty honest that it's unlikely there will be much done to address it in this coming legislative session. So just wanted to share that.
Did the licensing issue relate mostly to out-of-state people trying to get licensed, or is it in-house?
This past session, they really overhauled the entire licensing operation for the state, from the board that oversees teacher licensure to actually how one is considered eligible for a license in Minnesota. And part of it is trying to, I think, make it more streamlined for people coming from out of state, but it has essentially now been broken down into 4 different licensure tiers. So tiers 1 and 2 are for people who are just coming into the profession or maybe coming from out of state but don't yet meet all of the Minnesota standards. And then tiers 3 and 4 are closer to sort of our regular professional licenses. So in this booklet, actually, there's a good summary of what those tiers are and what you need to have to be eligible for the different tiers. So it is very different from previous approaches to teacher licensure here.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on to information and questions from the board.
I have a couple. One was, last time we talked about the impact of the lunch policy. Were we going to revisit that at the next meeting?
Yes.
I forget. Okay,
October
thank you.
16th, yes.
All right. And I guess for a meeting or two, could we, so we talked about the impact of the 7-period day and the start times at the high school level, but with all the shifting around, one of the parts of the operation that see the impact of all of it is transportation. And so I was wondering if we could get an update from the transportation team on how the busing system was adjusting to the new schedule. There's always some early year excitement, but now with one of the potential impacts that maybe we weren't as, that is I'm aware of now, but I didn't necessarily think of ahead of time. There's a couple things, but with the older schools, with the middle school and high school being at the later, the last round, any disruption earlier on in the chain could impact them, their arrival in an on-time manner, and with their schedule being, you have the same academic area first period every day, there could be an impact on that, whereas at the K-5 buildings, there could be different impacts on academics, or the teacher may be more nimble to move things around the day. And so I just want to talk about how that has happened and make sure that we are we have it locked and loaded, and everyone is arriving in a proper, with enough time to access the breakfasts that we provide, and trips to lockers, and hopefully we have that, like I said, locked down before any of the snow flies or the ice forms.
So we'll have the transportation team gather that. It sounds like we also want to do a nutrition update along with that. So that'll either be October 16th or November 13th. Probably November. Just thinking about the number of things that are there in October. So
I can send more of the note to Craig and you as well. So
perfect.
Are you aware that there has been issues?
I've heard some concerns raised. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we've been working very hard in the first weeks of school to get our busing on time. Obviously, there's also some pretty significant construction going on. And so with the time frame of students coming into school and dropping them off, I'm not sure if some of the struggles that we've had have to do with changed start times or more around really getting things as tight as humanly possible with those pretty big construction that are impacting all of us in Richfield at this time. So we're working on seeing what we need to do to adjust buses, routes, times, and do what we need to do, as Mr. Powers points out, perhaps doing some adjustments before the snow flies to really create some additional cushion, because with construction and snow, obviously we're gonna have some longer term challenges
Right.
this time.
I had a couple things. First, and I think maybe most importantly, Matthew, I just wanted to say thank you for being here. And I think all of us are excited to have you here. And we've been talking, through our most recent board meetings about how we want to make sure that this does feel meaningful and like it's a good use of your time, and that we are hearing your perspective, because it's important. Even the questions that you asked tonight, I think, already added a really helpful perspective. And I say that because I also know that there are portions of this meeting that probably don't feel particularly relevant to you and to your classmates. But we are gonna, I think, as a board, try our hardest to make sure that this feels meaningful and that we're getting all of the good things that you have to share with us. So just wanted to say that. And then also wanted to say thank you to the League of Women Voters Richfield for having Tina Lavin from the CQC group, Superintendent Unowski, and myself on their Inside the Issues program to talk about the schools and specifically the upcoming referendum. It's about an hour-long program. It is playing throughout the week on cable channel 15, but it's available anytime on the YouTube site for the League of Women Voters Minnesota. So
I actually watched it yesterday.
Did you?
It was definitely worth the effort.
Good. Well, I'm glad that we have something that's not just more writing, but actually a program that people could watch or listen to, that I think puts some of this in just a different format. So I was really glad that they invited the two of us and Tina to participate, and I think we had a good time overall.
Oh, it was exciting. We are actually posted also on the district's website, on the referendum webpage, under broadcast sponsored by the League of Women Voters. And so we also have access to that right there.
And then I don't know if somebody else was going to say this, you're going to say this, but because it's homecoming this weekend, also just wanted to say good luck to all of the teams, and I hope the week of fun activities here at the high school goes well. I saw the sign on the door when we came in outlining the different days.
Yes, fun activities for Spartan pride and excitement throughout the week. Obviously, we have a homecoming parade on Saturday, and actually, we are doing some Capitol facility tours. So the homecoming parade begins at 11:30. Tours of our high school and some of our facilities are going to be between 12 and 1 o'clock, which is also the time of cookout. And then I believe kickoff is at 2, so it promises to be a fun homecoming. Kickoff's at 1? Yeah. Kickoff is at 1. So it promises to be a great homecoming for all of us.
After the talk of the Spartan Zone, and we'll just mention now, is the school board involved at all in this parade?
You are absolutely welcome to join us. We have multiple district floats, and you are welcome to join on any of them at any time.
Thank you.
So if you'd like to, actually send an email to Teresa Rosen. She actually is one of our great organizers. In addition to organizing the Spartan Zone, she actually is organizing the homecoming parade. She actually did just send out an email as a reminder. And so we'll take the blame on myself for that one, for not reminding you all. So if you would like to specifically participate and be joining us in that parade, send an email to either myself or to Teresa Rosen, and we'll make sure to get you a primo seat in the parade.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. So we move on to future meeting dates. Our next meeting is October 16th, Monday at 7 p.m. It is just a regular meeting of the Richfield School Board, and the following meeting is November 13th, Monday at 7 p.m., a regular meeting hosted by Centennial Elementary School. Do we have?
Just a
sorry,
point
go
of interest on that, so just as a reminder, that is not the typical first Monday, that is the second Monday, pushed back so that we may canvass the election. And so as a reminder, the meetings in November are not the 7th or the 6th and 20th, they're the 13th and the 20th, and so they're back-to-back weeks, starting with the 13th.
Okay. Thank you for that. We will move on to suggested future agenda items. I think we kind of covered that.
We definitely have a list.
Okay, so that is it. If anyone would like to make a motion to move into closed session.
I'll move, we move into closed session.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Brockie, a second by Mr. Paulus to move into closed session in alignment with Minnesota Statute 13D03 for contract negotiations. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and we will move to closed session after a short recess.